Some 5 minutes before beginning this account, I ordered an Epson R-D1 on mpb.com. I used to really dig photography, but lately I've had the feeling that some of the art and craft of photography has been sacrificed at the altar of technological wizardry. This is, I think, because many of the challenges are gone. Modern autofocus, rock-solid stabilization, enormous spray and pray buffers with pre-recording tech, excellent high ISO performance, huge image files for convenient cropping. All of these add up to a relatively risk-free shooting experience. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Certainly I appreciate these features when I'm doing paid work because the results are so very consistent. But for daily documentary and personal images, using the most modern gear often feels like a sterile, joyless experience. Yeah, I do shoot film, lately on the esteemed Canon AE1, and what I dig about it is the ritual, the tactile experience. And I suppose I also fancy the look of different film stocks. What I don't like is the fact that to view my images, I'm running film through a convoluted process that ultimately results in digital images anyway. It's almost a half-in, half-out experience. On top of which, I'm woefully lazy when it comes to sending my film to a lab for development. Ho-ho, for the halcyon days, when you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a 1-hour developing lab. It was glorious to drop off a roll or two, grab lunch, and find your prints and negatives waiting for you with the taste of orange Julia still on your tongue. I must have 30 undeveloped rolls in storage. For a while I was developing and scanning my own black and white, but I was pretty crappy at both parts of the process, which again ultimately left me with digitally scanned images. So yeah, maybe film is the way to go. But first I reckon I'll run a little experiment. An experiment grounded in a bit of experience and a lot of speculation. The experience is that I used to own a Leica M8. I let it go and I regret it tremendously. It was, to date, my favorite digital camera. Maybe my favorite camera to use full stop. Alas, the price of these has risen steeply in recent years, so rather than getting gouged on another M8, I chose to get gouged on an Epson RD1, just half as gouged if you take my meaning. I speculate that the RD1 will scratch many of the same itches as the M8. Specifically, I dig the rangefinder experience, using M-mount glass and the CCD look. And those kicky gauges and shutter cocking lever, I'm into it. Ultimately, my hope is that this camera will nestle into the sweet spot of digital immediacy and film photography ritual. I also hope it's a more pleasant carry than my Canon 1D4, which is not dissimilar to hauling around a gallon of milk. So the RD1 is paid for and it's en route. And now begins what might actually be the sweetest part of the experience, the anticipation. The RD1 is out for FedEx delivery. No doubt this is an exciting moment. Who doesn't get off on anticipation? But moments like these have been a little bittersweet over the years. Indeed, I took a photo of the day I received my M8 in 2018. It was a moment steeped in feelings of adventure and excitement. It felt a little like I was ushering in a new era. Over the years, though, as I've purchased, borrowed, or demoed various pieces of kit, some of that giddy anticipation has been tempered. This is often because the expectations of the gear I've built up in my head haven't been consistent with the actual experience with it. So this time I'm doing my best to remember that this is just a camera. A cool one to be sure, but still just a camera. Hey, you know what never disappoints? Cottage cheese and pineapple. Time to go make some magic. The honeymoon period for a camera is an interesting thing. Indeed, I rewatched my first 2018 Leica M8 video in which I said, "It's sometimes challenging to take a step back in the face of such newness and excitement, and honestly appraise the challenging aspects of a new piece of gear, especially one that replaced a much-loved classic. But I will endeavor to do so." The RD1 isn't replacing a much-loved classic. It's, in fact, replacing a very capable camera that I just didn't like using. One so capable, in fact, that I had a spot of trouble finding my fingerprint as a photographer in the images. But that's neither here nor there. So let's look at just the first few Epson fingerprints. You're probably seeing it straight away. The two looks I tend to lean into in recent years are 1, a poorly developed contrasty black and white a la Tri-X, and 2, a S-curve blue to teal shift that gives me 90s color film vibes. You know, the mystery film you used to get for free or cheap when you ordered doubles at the local CVS. Candidly, I'm not fussed to see that this comes off as an impartial review, so I don't intend to balance the good and bad parts of the experience. That stuff will come out organically, I reckon. But I will say that I had fun with it today. Will that joy be sustained, or was it just a honeymoon? I suppose I should mention a little bit about the specs. The Epson R-D1 is a 6 megapixel APS-C CCD sensor. As I understand it, it's the same sensor that's in the Nikon D100. Incidentally, if you want to learn more about that cam, check out the very cool review by the legendary Matt's Notes, linked below. ISO range on the RD1 is 200 to 1600. It has a max shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. No live view, no self-timer that I can find, no auto ISO. The viewfinder is big and bright and seems to be well calibrated on this example, which is, for what it's worth, from pretty early on given its serial number in the 1800s. And if the sequential numbering setting is to be believed, this one has taken 980 shots, about 50 to 75 of which are mine. Of course, a previous owner might have shut off sequential numbering and shot 1 billion photos, but that seems unlikely given the condition. The first substantial photo walk with the RD1 occurred in St. Louis, at the Missouri Botanical Garden. It's a pretty cool place if you're into shapes and colors, so I thought it was appropriate for the task. The lens I used was the venerable Jupiter 8, a nifty 50 of the 50s, I guess you could say. This means I'm actually shooting at 75 millimeters, which I quite like. How about we look at 3 photos that speak to the experience today? I reckon you could call this an establishing shot. This is the Climatron, which, to my dismay, is nothing like Epcot on the inside. I mean, maybe if Epcot had been reclaimed by nature after the apocalypse. In any case, I see in this one what a person can expect from the dynamic range, with a shot that's reasonably exposed. Not much detail in the clouds, and the shadows get a little noisy when bumped, but the content in the middle works for me. Here's a fun capture, and a bit of a surprise when I set out to edit it. In the decisive moment, the middle duck there, the one that's mostly in focus, was entirely within the frame lines, but clearly the lens was seeing something different and the wing is clipped. Alas, and this happened more than once on the day, so the parallax is something to be mindful of when framing up. I tend to dig both architecture and black and white, so this shot is chocolate and peanut butter to me. And I'm into the UFO vibe too. For what it's worth, there's no monkeying with the gazebo here. The camera captured it in this way. Happy accident, I suppose, because I think most modern cameras would have picked up on the, entire bottom half of the building. This black and white is a converted RAW, which I usually prefer so I can adjust the luminance of the colors for better contrast. For example, the path and the grass were very similar in value after the conversion, but there was plenty of latitude in the RAW to knock down the luminance of the green grass for better contrast. So in short, the RD1 can achieve a black and white look that I dig. Alright, I guess that'll do for my first impressions. If I end up making more of these videos, I wonder if they'll follow the same trajectory of my M8 series. As I recall, I started to get frustrated with my inability to quickly master rangefinder shooting. We shall see. Anywho, thanks for stopping by and happy shooting.